Dear friends, welcome in our weekly free Daoland live stream where we discuss all kind of health related issues. Today we are going to talk about an issue that I get a lot of question about, not just from people on Facebook who approach me privately or my students, but also on my clients, because in many problems we also face emotional disturbances, and a lot of these disturbances are actually caused by the feelings that we have in our chest or our heart in that sense. The Chinese medicine heart and the Western medicine heart are of course not the same. The Chinese medicine heart is not a blood pump, but it is actually a palace where a lot of blood comes in and a lot of qi comes in, for the simple reason that the Shen awareness has to be made aware of all kind of influences and facts that happen in your personal empire, that's your body, and your life as a whole, and as a result of that has to make decisions on what to do with your life in general. So as a result of that, we have to approach heart problems in a different way than people would do in Western medicine. Western medicine, they very often they place stents, or they operate on the heart, or they replace the heart, or anything like that. These things can be done, of course, as a means to success, but for instance, I have an example, somebody who had a dottering where, because there was something wrong with some of the heart valve kind of things, I told this person in diagnosis the causes of your problem is in the liver. So because of old unresolved emotions, so to say, and it was very clear for that person, very angry person at that time anyway, and he denied it. I said, like, well, you can look forward to the next train of symptoms are going to appear, because you're going to take medication which makes your heart inaccessible for resolving these issues. So you have to resolve them more at the source in the liver. If you do not do that, then because the heart is not accessible, because it is propped up by your medication, it will eventually involve your stomach. And as a result of the involvement of the stomach, eventually acid regurgitation will come up, and it will give you a burning sensation in your chest at the moment where there's the opening of the esophagus, and it might actually go open higher up, and it will cause burning in your esophagus, and as a result of that there will be blistering on the inside, and it will create pockets with acid remains, but also that will collect food remains, so that food doesn't properly sink out into your stomach, so that you become hungry. And now 20 years later, this is exactly the problem that this man is suffering. This is something that when you talk now about with this man about this, he will deny it, because he said, like, well, we never talked about that before, we only talked about my heart, because that is usually the way how Western medicine approaches things. It looks at things from a perspective of an organ and of the chemicals that might affect that organ, and in some cases the heart actually is being seen as influenced by your respiration, or sometimes the volume of your blood. And this is where there's an overlap between Chinese and Western medicine when we're going to talk about these kind of things in general. What is very important though is that we discuss the heart from the perspective of Chinese medicine, and when we do so, we have to think about the function of the king. Every king has vassals. Hi Lucas, nice to see you. You want to be in the group today? Because I can bring you on camera if you like. When you are observing your heart as a king, then you can say that your heart in general is in contact with all kind of messengers, you can say. These are like the ministers of your mind and of your decision power and so on. You have to be properly informed before you can make a decision. Of course, modern science tries to define everything as chemistry in your brain, but for Chinese medicine, of course, that makes no sense, because you are a person that is alive, and everything can be arranged in your health in relationship to your personhood. And the things that cannot be arranged, of course, you can go to a medical doctor and have something that is going to affect you maybe also for the rest of your life. That means, in general, Chinese medicine says everything that happens to you and the personal level has to be resolved. That means that your personal action is going to affect that. And this is where qigong, but also where your diet is playing an important role. And as you have heard probably, we are busy with developing this fitness app for qigong fitness, and we are busy with a food medicine app program also, so that people learn to regulate themselves on the most basic levels of their lives, and you can be one of those, of course. But I'm first going to explain you a few simple things that explain exactly what the heart is in Chinese medicine. I hope this marker is still working, because you never know. I don't know if you can see that properly. I can bring the camera maybe a little bit closer, you can see it a little bit better. The heart in itself is seen as a mirror. That's Chinese medicine. This is the base of the character of the heart. This is one broken line. You see, this is the character of a one, and this is the character of unity. All these lines, they're all symbolizing the same thing. They are aspects of you being you. So when you feel united, E, then at that moment you are united. When you are like a straight directional line, your life actually has a direction and goes somewhere, you are like a one, then at that moment this is great. And this is exemplified by, for instance, this character, Yuan, which also identifies that you are going somewhere. Can you see that on the screen? Yeah, you can see that on the screen. And then there is the Daoist character of Qi, which is below there with fire, because you're moving there. Oh, you know, no, it's okay, no problem, Lucas, another time, no problem. But what happens here is that here you see the Qi going in this direction. This is, you know, you're moving somewhere, you are motivated by your own actions, and when your actions actually return in a negative sense, oh no, I would have to admit you there. So if you say yes, Lucas, I will just put you here and you become one of the screens here in the thing. I just discovered that recently, and I can invite people in the class to participate. And when you see this four movements of the Qi inside, you can see that when these are being thrown into the heart, then at that moment you see that they become dirt in your heart. So if your actions move against you because you make the wrong decisions, then at that moment you see that your feelings and your thoughts are affecting your heart in a negative sense. And as a result of this negative sense, you can say, oh, my heart is feeling troubled. So this is why in Chinese medicine and Daoist medicine per se, but also Daoist practice as a whole, they don't want you to fill your heart like they do in modern esoterics, but they want you to empty your heart so that, you know, you can start observing things from a proper perspective. The heart as a blood pump muscle in Western medicine is seen as one of the strongest muscles that you have, and it has to, because it has to continuously keep on pumping, because as soon as your blood starts stopping pumping, or pumping less fast or pumping faster, all kind of things happen to your physiological processes, but also you start feeling unsafe and you develop anxiety. So anxiety is basically the main issue of the heart. That means an emperor who is losing control is a panicking emperor. You see this in countries where presidents losing control over the story that they try to develop. You see this, for instance, in Turkey with Netanyahu, where he became more and more repressive as a result of the fact that he made a few mistakes. And he knows now that because of these mistakes, if he would lose power, he would go to prison most likely. If not, somebody ends him one way or the other. So he has to maintain this level of power to make sure that he doesn't go out of his popularity. You see that happened to Donald Trump, who noticed that he made some very big mistakes. So he has to hold on to a particular kind of power, and he has to keep fear onto people so that people will not send him to prison maybe, or maybe liberate the country from the actual justice system that is required to judge a person who makes mistakes. And you see the same now in Israel when the President Netanyahu was on the verge of losing power and going to prison most likely, now uses the violence against the Palestinians, or the perceived violence of the Palestinians against the Israelis, as a means to settle his power and actually get back on the saddle for another period until the next election is happening. This is what happens when your heart is getting troubled by its own problem. When people get into a burnout, it is very similar like that, and as a result of that, things happen. Your breathing is affected, your intestines are being affected, you develop gastritis, maybe you start with farting and burping, but maybe you end up with a swollen belly or a big belly or anything like that, or maybe drinking too much, or maybe eating too much, all kind of stuff that are going to affect your heart even more, and that you have to try to maintain to make sure that you stay calm. In essence, when we do Dantian meditation, what we do is actually we calm the heart. So when you just sit or stand and you hold your hands on the Dantian, this is already going to calm your heart over some time. It makes your Dantian stronger, and your Dantian for Chinese medicine is the pump of qi and blood, so that the body actually calms down your breath. Your lungs are being rooted into the Dantian, and as a result that your lungs will regulate themselves, and they will regulate also the pumping of your heart. So that is a very important practice. Just go stand with your feet shoulder wide, and at the moment when you stand with your feet shoulder wide and your hands on the Dantian, I think you can just not see my hands here. So I put this one back on here, and put this one a little bit more downward, so you can see a little bit more. It's so nice, all this modern equipment. So when you're just standing with your feet forward and your hands on the Dantian, and at that moment your palms, your left and the right palm commonly are being left like this, because the right is seen as the moon and the left is seen as the sun. And as a result of that, when you hold them on the Dantian, you see that the sun controls the moon, the left controls the right. Of course, that is how it should be, also in politics probably. And at the moment when you are holding the Dantian like that, you see that your breath gradually calms, but you at the same time will experience after some time what is called qi. Qi is the arrival of qi, and it feels like your body is lightening up like a lamp, but a lamp without any friction, and you feel your body feels light and your heart feels empty. When the heart feels empty, actually your own natural light of your awareness is shining back on itself, so the heart can actually see itself, and that is the heart symbol, where you can say, okay, the light of all the events in the world is being reflected in the heart. And it is what Lao Tzu says, when the heart is empty, when you're in deep meditation, and at that moment the heart reflects all the events in the world. So that means that your heart has no secrets, there's no secrets for the heart in your awareness. And just somebody asked me yesterday about the third eye and stuff like this. No, that is not the opening of the third eye. Clairvoyance is not a third eye activity, it's just simply having an open heart and see the things for what they are. When you make a judgment though, you say like, oh, I see this and this in your heart or in your behavior or something like this, and at that moment it is not a clear heart, it is actually at that moment a judgment, and that is one of the turbid things entering the heart. So making a judgment, making a clairvoyant judgment about somebody else is actually polluting your own heart. That is why in Daoism and also in Buddhism, being a clairvoyant is not seen as a big thing. It is, a side effect. If you try to make money on it, good for you, but for your spiritual progress it's basically a dead end. So it's not very important. At the moment when you come to calming of your heart, that means clairvoyance is a natural thing. It just means that you are aware of things in general. So if your heart is in a good place, and at that moment you're automatically aware of things. If you are not clairvoyant, that means then therefore that you cannot properly see things for what they are. There is no big difference between these things. That is an interesting view, isn't it? That is also why in Taoism and in Buddhism they say, most people are sub-health in level, and it's in Taoist medicine of course very important, and also in Chinese medicine people are very well aware of the fact that most people live in a sort of sub-health state. At the moment when you're standing like this for a longer time, your breath becomes calm, you become aware of the fact that you actually have thoughts and you have all kind of feelings that happen. And the judging of your thoughts and feelings is actually the next important thing in your practice. At the moment when you are judging your thoughts and your feelings, you can say, this thought is not going to help me. And to be able to think for yourself, because your heart is empty enough to say like, this thought is not going to help me, means that you understand the moral value of your things. So you first have to develop te qi. This is also what people seek in acupuncture. Te qi is the arrival of the clearing of the body, with as a result that both the body qi, the body blood, and the body shen, everything circulates freely, and as a result of that, all the corners of your empire are being brightened, and you can see there, or you can at least feel good about these things. This is what is called the inner smile in some schools. It is a natural process. If you project it onto your body to smile, then the body feels a little bit like when you are hugging somebody. I'm sorry for the people who really like hugging. I like hugging myself too. But in essence, when you hug somebody who where the hugging is not a natural process, then at that moment actually you take somebody in possession, and it is just as aggressive as looking somebody in the eye when you want to sell something, right? So when I look into the camera like this, right, I look you straight on. This is a very aggressive act, and that is what animals do before they go attack. So hugging somebody and holding, that is like an attack thing. It's a vampirizing thing, and that is in that sense biologically it is an act of dominance to hug somebody. And this is bad for the heart of the one who is hugged, although they might surrender and say like, okay, yes, okay, I am submissive, or it may be hard on the one who is hugging, because it starts believing in its own dominance and how wonderful and great it is. The neutrality of the heart is in Taoism highly praised, so that if there is no sense of dominance or submission and so on, is very important. So understanding the moral nature of your thoughts is very important. And there's a lot of different kind of thoughts which have a negative influence. This negative influence reflects back on you. Every thought that you exhale through your voice actually is also something that you ingest inside your heart, because many people, they talk faster than they think, and as a result that they say things that later on might have regrettable consequences. So you shouldn't talk about things that you might regret later talking about, unless when you really want to do something with that and you know for sure this is going to be a good influence. And this is what is called in Tibetan Buddhism the wheel of karma returning. So every time when you do something, you say something, you create a process, and this process becomes bigger and bigger until eventually it comes back to you one way or the other. Maybe not directly, but indirectly it has consequences. Like there's a dust particle in front of my face. Like for instance invading a country to get rid of terrorists. Then at that moment, on the long term, there are all kinds of consequences. You see this with Europe and America being united in the way how they attacked Iraq that time. It is still a mess in these countries. It was already a mess before because of the things that the European powers already did in the past, and it is, not going to resolve itself very easy. It all becomes very complicated, and nobody really knows how to resolve it, although I am thinking everybody is with good intentions. But this is just people are stuck in their stories very often, and that is because the heart is full of something. Like when you're a nationalist, your heart is full of your nation's pride, and as a result of that you can't think clearly, you do stupid things. Nationalism is never really very good. Being anti-nation also is not very good, because at that moment also you cannot come together to an understanding about what is good for you. And in your daily life, in your family life, it is exactly the same. On your workplace, it's exactly the same. If your heart is empty, you can be open to each other's thoughts and feelings. But then you still have to understand the nature of your thought. And in Taoism, there's a very simple trick for that. At the moment when you look at your thoughts and whatever kind of thoughts you have that are coming up, and you see that is a negative thought, like, oh, this person is such an ugly person. Then at that moment you can think, this is not a very constructive thought. In the I Ching it says, be careful about your thoughts, because even though it cannot be heard, it can still be felt on 1,000 miles away. It actually talks about 1,000 li, but that is about 500 miles or kilometers. But that doesn't matter that much. It's the principle of the saying that is important. So at the moment when you think a thought like that and you notice yourself, you're thinking like that, you're saying actually something, you're thinking something negative. and as a result of that you make a negative judgment about somebody, and that is either visible in your face or you radiate that kind of ugliness. So if you talk about auras and stuff like this, then at that moment your aura would change color, and you have a negative aggressive stance against that person. So that kind of thoughts is automatically creating aversion between you and that person, and it will be very hard to overcome that aversion in the case that you need that person at a later time, because that person happens to be the only person who can save you from starvation or from a disrepaired car, because that person knows how to repair your car, or he just can give you money for buying bread because you're hungry. Very simple principles. So at the moment when you catch yourself having negative thoughts about people, to calm your heart, you have to think the opposite. That means that you have to try to reformulate your thoughts. You can correct yourself. Like, no, that is not the right thought. I should have thought this person has these and these kind of qualities, and I should respect this person for these qualities. And that at that moment becomes a recognition of what somebody actually really contributes to your life. And this is very important. So every time when you have a thought which is acknowledging the contribution to your life without becoming selfish, of course, that is important. Every time when you acknowledge your contribution to somebody else's life, that is also very important. Your heart actually becomes very elated and happy with that, and you become very calm on the inside when you have positive thoughts. Like for instance, if I would think like, oh, you know, people who are here on Facebook, they're following me, these are just stupid people that have to tell these obvious things. That would be a very negative thought. I'm assuming in my thoughts that you already know that there are things that you should still learn, like everybody else needs to. I need to learn new things also in the same way, continuously. And I know a few tricks that I hold up in my sleeve, and in these sessions I talk about these tricks and I share them with you. And these are different tricks than what I tell to people who are in my classes when they are practicing Chinese medicine or Daoist medicine, or when they are doing the health builder program to try to build communities around themselves with health practices, very basic barefoot doctor kind of stuff. Then at that moment you can see that that actually contributes to me and my standing towards myself, so that I can stand here with a certain kind of inner peace, because I know, like, okay, this aspect I talk about because I have already some control over my thoughts in that sense. And at the moment when somebody else has a thought or says something, says for instance a curse word, and you can say any kind of curse word. I can't say them because Facebook or YouTube or whatever this video ever going to land on is going to, how do you say that? Ban me for using these words. Maybe that's the right word. It is not decent to use curse words because they hurt you yourself more than they do to somebody else. So when you have another word that you can think of than a curse word, and you can say something like just for what it is, like for instance something is going wrong and you just say like, wow, this is not going right, then at that moment is better than saying beep, 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 right? So at that moment you are actually contributing to your thought process instead of blocking yourself further by filling yourself with anger, and this anger is filling up your heart and you get more frustrated. When you have accumulated enough frustration, your mind becomes restless and you become very wild in your mind, and you start having all kind of wild feelings and you want to feel more excited and excitable and stuff like this. So you start doing all kind of things that make you feel more excited, and you go maybe fight with people, or you go scream at people, or you go listen to loud music, or you go watch violent movies or something like this. And as a result of that, your sense organs are continuously being saturated with impulses, and this oversaturation comes as resonance and as noise basically into your heart, and this is again the things that are entering into the heart, the turbidities that are part of your heart and your feelings and so on and so on. So at the moment when you are controlling your mind, you basically try to be aware of what you're saying and what you're thinking, and you try to correct yourself through these practices. So try this for a moment. Come up with one thought that is habitual for you, of which you actually really know, like, this is not a good thought. Take 5 minutes for that after the class, because I want to share with you one more thing. Because if your blood is not strong enough, and that means that you're not exercising enough, or you're exercising in the wrong way so that you exhaust your body, then at that moment you can say, my heart feels insufficient, and as a result that all kind of problems can happen. For instance, the yang of the heart, the pumping function of the heart is not good enough, or maybe your blood is not strong enough, so there is not enough blood in the body, so the pumping is actually going good, but it has to work very hard to make sure that enough blood goes through your heart and into your body, so that it actually creates a vacuum behind itself. All these kind of things can all be very effective. And of course, restoring your blood, there's all kind of food things you can do for that, and it's not now, this moment, how you can do that, but it creates a particular kind of anxiety, and this anxiety creates restlessness in the heart. And to reset your heart, you very easily, you put your thumb, the tip of your thumb, in the middle of your chest bone, and the chest bone is like a cross from here, the start where the esophagus is, where the hollow is of the throat, and here also where is the sword-shaped attachment of your chest bone, and you see that this chest bone is made out of 5 vertebrae, and you take the middle point of these vertebrae. That is for many people a little bit sensitive. Ironically, I'm wearing a blouse underneath here, and blouses very often have a button on that point, so you have to first shift the button so that you do not press on the button, because that is an uncomfortable feeling. It is also directly between your nipples. When you're a woman, you want to find that point exactly. You first have to lie down, because then your breasts normally fall automatically in a place where your nipples come on the side, and as a result that you come to this place. And at that moment, what you do is very simply, you hold your one hand and the other hand together, and you press this point against your heart. If that is sensitive, that means, oh yeah, there's something really with your heart. If it is not so sensitive and you can press quite hard, your heart is pretty much calm and it doesn't panic very quickly. But what you want to do is you want to hold pressure on it without pressing too hard, because you don't want to pain yourself. You want to press in such a way that you feel the sensitivity, and once you feel you can handle more, you increase the pressure a little bit, and you continue like that until your heart feels more calm. So you can instantly try to resolve your anxiety as a result of it. When I do this, my dantian automatically becomes calm and full, because then the heat that is in my heart, for instance, because of talking to you right now, automatically sinks into my dantian instead of getting somewhere in my stomach. It causes me to be hungry and annoyed and doing all kind of other bad things to my body. So this is another practice that you can practice. Then there's a third practice which might be very helpful, that has to do with creating a sense of safety. There is first of all the link body practices. I have a Facebook, I have a group where you can join there. I am planning to organize frequent workshops there, mini workshops, to do this kind of practice, because you need frequent adaptations when you are doing these kind of things. So it will be good to set out every time in a mini workshop some practices, then you go practice, and then we get back together and we go work on that. And that creates a sense of belonging to the world. As a person, you are part of the world, and if you do not embed yourself inside the world, you're not part of the network of being, so to say, then you think you are yourself an individual and you're something very special, or maybe through your excellence in something good, or in your excellence in something bad. Like for instance, when you are very depressed, you think negative about yourself, you're actually being very arrogant about your excellence, about how wonderful you are in being bad, and that is the Daoist view, of course. And at the moment when you think you're very good in a particular kind of skill and you should be paid very well for it, then at that moment you're actually very arrogant in your excessive thinking of your quality skills. And so that means that there is no reason to see yourself as exceptional other than being in the service of nature as a whole and of humanity as a whole, of course. Also, that is the only way how nature can survive on the long term, and that's the natural way of thinking, and your body thinks like that, so you should also think like that. But at the moment when you do not, then it is very important to recognize the fact that the heart is seen as part of the Wu-Xing cycle, and the Wu-Xing cycle is also directed to the area around you, and in this case the heart is directed towards the south, and south, the sun, is pretty much a harsh place, because in the south, where the closer you come to the sun, the hotter it becomes. You can see that in any country. The more south you become, the more chance on desertification, dryness, and so on and so on, depending on the local microclimates in areas, of course. But at the moment when you are looking at this southern direction and you feel the warmth from the southern direction come to you, this is very similar to the feelings that your mother used to give you when you were still a baby, assuming of course that you were not a foundling or that your mother had emotional and psychological problems through which she was not able to connect with her child. In that case you need a little bit more serious approach, but the principle is still going to be the same, because this is the feeling that your mother should have given. So as a result of that, you could actually embrace yourself in that kind of feeling and then feel yourself enveloped in the warmth. And at the moment when you're just standing, you keep your hand on the dantian, it's the same. And you look at the south. You don't even have to look at the sun per se, but you look at the south even when the sun is not up, it is dark. And at that moment still from the south there is this continuous emanation of kindness coming towards you. This is just something that happens because we are creatures of the light. If we all the time have to live in the shadows, we become a little bit like mole people, and as a result of that we become negatively influenced. In many hot countries people live in the shadows because the sun is too harsh. But still the principle is the same. When you're in a very hot country, you're standing in the shadow, you're looking at the south, you still feel this kindness because it is due to the sun that you actually are there. So to recognize the sun as a parent which has an enormous significance for your existence and really takes care of you, that is a very important part. If the sun is not there, you have no opportunity to understand where is the south. Then just imagining yourself a large copper circle or oval or something like that in front of you, radiating this warm glowing coppery light, and then letting that embrace your body. It is a mental projection at that moment. It will at least calm you a little bit. It will definitely not have the power of the actual south, because your mind is not the reality, right? The mind is not able to cure the mind. The mind is only able to set out a trajectory through which we can reattach ourselves back to nature and as a result find wholeness within ourselves. And I hope this is very helpful for you, and if you have questions then put them below. If you feel like supporting this channel and these things is very nice, in my Patreon, Daoland Healthcare, patreon.com Daoland Healthcare. There you can of course also sponsor this program. There is also other opportunities. You can contact me for that. I will add a form below here if you have any particular kind of questions. This is something that I just learned as part of the app building process, and we are going to use that for you also. Every time when you look at things and you have questions, you can add in that so that you can privately experience solutions for that. That will be really great. It is a Facebook form, so it is very easy to use. I guess I have no experience with it yet, but I hope it's going to contribute to our working together to create a better health for everybody, and then for free, because that is of course the best. And if we can support each other in this process, that will be really great. I'm hoping this never will become a commercial program, but I do admit I do have expenses to be able to make this. So if somebody can contribute extra, that will be every now and then even, that will be really great. And I'm not going to beg, oh please, no, I'm just kidding, like a joke. But it means that you need to have control over your mind and over your feelings, and that means having control over your awareness, and it means emptying your heart. So use these tricks, strengthen your blood, control your thoughts and feelings, make sure you have a good retention in your dantian, calm your breathing, make sure you are not troubled by all kind of stuff in your life, and make sure you're integrated with nature as a whole. That will be the most important thing. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very happy day wherever you are in the world. Whatever your circumstances, I hope it's going to improve because of your actions. Thank you, Toby. Welcome.